Welcome back, folks. As part of the new season, we've been encouraging you to send in your questions for us to discuss, and we're going to kick off that section with a question from Robert McEwen.
Hi Tino, it's Robert McEwen here. A quick question for you and the guys. As the squad currently stands, with the people we've got in the building just now, how many points do you think we would pick up in the upcoming 8 Champions League games?
So obviously a wee bit tricky given that we've not had the draw, but hypothetically, good question. It's an interesting one. So Paddy, in short, with the current squad as it stands, no additions, how many points can we get from those 8 Champions League games?
God, it is a tough question. I think for me, I've looked at pot 4, I've looked at pot 3, and we're going to play 2 teams from them. And I think that, you know, having finally maybe the benefit of a good draw, I do think that there's teams that we could take 6 points from in both of those pots. Pot 2 and pot 1, yeah, you're just going in and hoping and just seeing how you can do at Celtic Park. And if there's a freak result away from home, I'll take that as well, of course. But I think for me, I would say that with the current squad and a nice draw, I would like to think maybe between 12 and 14.
Ambitious. The suggestion is, did I hear it right, that it's 4 million, maybe 4 million euro a win?
Yeah.
That's really incredible money. So there's a lot to be said for that in itself.
Did you hear that, Peter?
I mean, it's as good an incentive as any, isn't
Absolutely.
it? James, Paddy's talking there about the various pots, and traditionally we would be a pot 4 side, generally speaking. So you've got 2 games against a pot 1 side, 2 games against a pot 2, and 2 against a pot 3. You're the underdog effectively in every game you go into. Now you've got these 2 games against another pot 4 team. Celtic are going to be pot 3 this time around,
confirmed.
I believe.
Yeah.
So 2 games against a pot 4 team, that's got to be your focus for picking up at least some points. And equally, you should be going for broke in the pot 3 games as well. Less so, as Paddy says, about pot 1 and pot 2. So huge hypothetical just now in terms of who we might go on to add and you know, make the team stronger with in the coming days and couple of weeks. But what do you think? Is there a decent scope here for Celtic to get some decent points?
Not as long as the back 4 stays as it is. You know, the way that Robert's phrased his question, we keep Matt O'Reilly, we keep Rio Hatate, we've now got Ida, we've got Kyogo, so there's strength in the middle going forward, but we will be leaky at the back. It's as simple as that.
And that forms the next part. We've got a second question coming up from Gordon Hogg, and we'll play that, and that is more focused on the defensive side. I just want to put a couple of pointers up though. There's a lot of folks saying re-signing Adam Ida, re-signing Paulo Bernardo and signing Kasper Schmeichel, you're effectively standing still. I disagree, because this time last year you didn't have any of those 3 guys available to you get into Europe. You're stronger for a Nicholas Kuhn being on form. You're stronger for Adam Ida being a good, powerful striker. And I think, fantastic as Joe Hart was, Kasper Schmeichel's an upgrade. So you are stronger. I don't think there's any debate in that. And I think as much as there's work to be done, Paddy, I think we're in a better place than we were this time last year.
I would agree with you. I would have to say about the Kasper Schmeichel thing. Kasper Schmeichel's had a good start to his Celtic career.
You're not having it, are you?
No. No, listen. I think he's a very good goalkeeper. I'm continuing to say that, but I think we discredit Joe Hart there.
No,
I don't.
I was really kind. Did you not hear me?
No. But you're saying he's an upgrade. I think it's too early to say that yet. We've not seen him under the pressures of Europe yet. We haven't, and I think that's where these guys are going to get tested. They're not playing against that level every single week. And the back line is a big issue, 100%. It's the likes of Nicholas Kuhn, you know, they've had the opportunities at Ajax, Bayern Munich, as I've mentioned. They're now here, they've found a little bit of form. It's a different test when you're going into those kind of games. Are you going to relish it, or are you going to get found out and feel the pressure of it? That's the same for a lot of players. I agree with you. It will be nice. I think it will be really exciting to see Ida in Europe. I do. Yeah. If he's used, and I'm sure he'll play plenty of minutes,
especially away. I think.
Aye,
against that a bit.
Definitely, and I do think that we look at Europe a little bit differently in terms of how we approach the game as well. I just gone back to that Madrid game. We I know the red card plays a big part in it, but we set up to try and go for it for a little bit at the beginning, and I think we can be quite naive that way in Europe, especially away from home. The back line is the big issue. Of course it is. I just think that what we've looked at in the past few years is, well, especially last season, we were speaking about Liam Scales defensively. He does enjoy that, but it stops us going forward because teams are just like, let them pass the ball to him. And we're seeing it domestically with that as well.
Seen it yesterday.
He had a couple of moments yesterday. No, they're valid points, Paddy, and I do note your points on Kasper Schmeichel. I think he's going to be really good for Celtic. I'm very confident in that. But you're right, he's not been tested just yet. And it's one thing doing it against Kilmarnock and a couple of games against Hibs. It's another thing doing it at that top level. He's done it historically in his career. Let's see if he's got it in the locker. James, I want to spend just a wee bit of time on Matt O'Reilly. So obviously, the clock is ticking down. Atalanta look like they've fallen out the race. They've signed an alternative to Matt O'Reilly. Southampton have said they can't spend what Celtic want them to spend. Brighton do now, according to Sky Sports today, they are in talks and there's maybe something there. But what do you think? I'm with the clock ticking, I'm thinking we might just see Matt O'Reilly for another few months at Celtic till January, and that would be huge. And I was watching yesterday, I was thinking, you're thinking, we've got a decent side here. We've mentioned that we're a couple of players short of being a really good side. With Matt O'Reilly, you've got a genuine chance of doing something in Europe or otherwise.
I think I'll be gone by the end of the week.
Right, I hope.
Yeah,
That's the end of that section.
I think
let's move on.
I think Brighton operate very professionally in the transfer market. They know what they're going for. They know the numbers. They know their parameters. They know that Celtic were very strong when it came to Atlanta's bids, and it wasn't like Celtic were being obstinate. They just said, "This is the valuation we have in the player. If you're going to meet that valuation, then let's have a conversation." They never did. So Brighton know exactly what they need to deal with. It's really interesting that Brighton waited for that one to kind of blow itself out before getting really involved, because they know a lot more now in terms of how the negotiations are going to go. I think they'll pay about 29-30 million for him.
Oof.
I think O'Reilly said he wants to play Champions League football. I do. And now they've said, but that's not an option anymore.
That was the big thing. That
I do think that's
Atalanta, were the Champions League team, and I think that's where Matt O'Reilly belongs. I didn't really see him going to Brighton, but maybe there's a third party, yet to present themselves that is still in the Champions League.
That's true.
I don't think Brighton would excite Matt O'Reilly that much. I understand.
It can only be a stepping stone, can't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, I understand that they're playing at a good level. They're a well organised club. I don't know who their new guy is. De Zerbi was obviously a very talented coach for them. They've got aspirations to get towards Europe, but at the moment they're not at that level that Atalanta are at and that Celtic are at in terms of Champions League. And I'm just not sure if Matt O'Reilly would really be swayed by that. The one thing that might sway him, and it would sway everybody, is the money. He would obviously make some life-changing money. I know we're going to say that he's a balanced guy and he's got his feet in the ground. Money eventually talks.
He knows
for
he'll get the
everybody.
money anyway.
Kate always laughs at me every time Matt O'Reilly's brought up in the house, and she says, "Oh, is it?" Because every Celtic fan says
he brought up a lot in your
he's a
house?
very, very intelligent guy. No, she just doesn't get it. Bizarrely enough, he's a very intelligent guy, and she's like, "Oh, is he?" Every time Matt O'Reilly's, is that the intelligent one? Aye,
Denise Sudoku.
aye, exactly.
The situation just now with Brighton is that it looks like Billy Gilmour's just about to join Napoli. If that goes through,
They need.
it's this whole domino rally effect that we've spoken about. Certain things need to happen for other things to then fall into place regarding Celtic.
Napoli are also about to close in on McTominay as well.
Interesting. Fulham were the name. Anyway, we'll move on from that. There's some quotes today. I seen them on Everything Celtic on Twitter. So it's Rodger speaking about midfield in general. He says, "I still think we need another player in that position. If he (brackets Matt O'Reilly) was to go, we'd need two more. I'll need to speak to the board. There's a lot of work going on and there's lots that we need to do. But for now, it's really about the players that are here. They're doing a brilliant job. We know where we want to strengthen, and I'm pretty hopeful that we can do that." James, it's encouraging though that regardless what happens with Matt O'Reilly, and I really, really hope he stays around for another few months, but regardless, we're looking for other players in that position.
I mean, I would never say this really, but Roger sounds about as naive as me when it comes to Celtic and transfers.
Rodgers is not naive.
I wanted one, now I want two. That sounds like something stupid, I would say.
I think he's in the form of his life at the moment, Brendan Rodgers.
He's been great.
I think
He's loving
he's flying. He's very confident. He's just saying all the right things at this moment, Paddy.
He is. My thinking on that though is that we've got to then be realistic. If that's the case and we need to bring these players in, does Odin Thiago Holm need to go? Does Tomoki Iwata need to go?
Maybe.
Because
Iwata not even benched yesterday.
I know, but this is what I'm saying. Like, it's all right saying, yeah, we need to go and get these players. We've still not had any update about James McCarthy as well, guys. I think like that guy's taking 5 figures off us every week. So
It's not his fault.
no, it's not. It's not. But what I'm saying is that our board will operate on the basis of we don't replace any of these players until they're gone, and making sure that the wage bill is kept as tight as possible. I think that this has been our big issue, and I said this at the first podcast back. We've still got so many players that we need to actually say, hey, what we're doing with them. It's all right going saying that we want to bring these players in and replace the likes of O'Reilly, potentially replace the likes of Rio Hatate, but what do we have there? Is that good enough to keep them there? And do we have ready replacements for when these guys do go? Saying that we need one midfielder, I'm a bit like, well, what's the Bernardo signing for?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think Celtic's Celtic's strongest 11, 12, 13, 14 is pretty good. It's just when you start to go out into the reserves from there, we do lack that genuine depth, and that you'll get caught out in Europe. Domestically, I'm watching yesterday and I'm thinking Hibs, Hearts, Rangers, Aberdeen, or otherwise. I think right now, if we don't sign anybody, I think we're comfortable domestically. But you're only a couple of injuries, a couple of suspensions, those kind of things that could trouble you. But absolutely, getting into Europe, we need to make those additions. Anyway, to round it off, in terms of Robert's question, final response, 24 points up for grabs. You've suggested 12 to
12,
14.
I think, would be a great amount for us. And I think, a really good amount if we got it. But I think if we sign the right players, and I know we're talking about the squad we have at the moment, but I do think that it's doable. I do. I think this is it's not the strongest Champions League setup I've seen. Not talking about the format, just in terms of the teams involved this year. I think that, we could definitely take a few big results.
Yeah, so potentially 12 out of 24 for Paddy. James, what about yourself?
Oh, we're woefully ill prepared. Between 6 and 10 points.
Give me a number.
Tops. 6.
6. 2 wins and...
No, 8. 2 wins, 2 draws.
2 wins, 2 draws. I'm going for 11. I'm somewhere between the two, and I was trying to do a bit of thinking while you were blaying. 11 would be made up of 3 wins and a couple of draws, and then you can take 3 defeats from your pot 1 team and maybe 1 from a pot 2 side. But we'll see. But it's a good question from Robert, but a lot of moving parts between now and when we get to that stage. Second question that comes in, it's from Gordon Hogg. Gordon's a good friend of the show. Happy belated birthday as well to Gordon. He was 61 last week, so hope he had a good one. He asks quite specifically about our defensive options in Europe.
Many of the goals Celtic concede appear to be due to issues against Champions League European teams who proved more athletic than our players. I realise budget plays a major part, but should Celtic be prioritising height and physicality along with skill to avoid these situations where our defenders can appear outmatched?
James, I don't want to put words into Gordon's mouth, but is he talking about Greg Taylor specifically and maybe a wee bit of Liam Scales?
I mean, I think Taylor is more athletic than he was at Celtic, but there comes a natural plateau in any single individual. But yeah, I agree with Gordon's premise. We do get bullied. You can see it, and not necessarily off of Real Madrid, off of other teams in the Champions League as well. Just guys who seem to be now, whether their medical regime is up to code and would pass tests, and football is woefully prepared for drug testing and things like that. It just doesn't really happen as much as it should do. I think that gets abused all across the competitions. I definitely don't want to see us go down that road. But there's no way that Rodgers in particular and the doctors, that the medical staff that he's brought in, the sports science staff, there's no way he's not driving these guys to be the peak physical athletes that they can. There's obviously a balance on an athlete between bulk and speed. I can make myself bigger, but does that affect how quick I can turn, how quick I can run? All these things, and it's a balance. But there do seem to be players that we're not saying. If you look at Ida, he's a physical specimen of a guy, just a natural, big, well-built athlete kind of thing.
Yep.
And we've got guys who don't have that physique. So do we need to go down the road of actually signing guys who are more naturally bigger, and then the work they do in the gym adds to that? It might be just someone like, and I don't mean to pick on Taylor or Scales or anyone kind of thing, but maybe they've maxed out to where they can get to. I don't see Kuhn becoming a heavyweight boxer anytime soon, so there'll be a limitation there. Obviously, in those two positions, being defensive positions, I would prefer, a bigger athlete in terms of those positions to be able to deal with what they're coming up against.
Paddy, I don't know if I've picked him up wrong. Is James suggesting we get the players full of roids? Is that the chat?
I specifically said
bulk them up.
We're going to win the Champions League.
Just get full of those injections.
Get full of
the protein.
Plenty of teams have done it.
I think there's no doubt though. I think back to the Atletico Madrid game at Celtic Park last season, and I pinned the 2 goals at Greg Taylor's door. He was weak in the penalty, which Griezmann hit the post with and then converted. And then for the second goal, he went to go and make a tackle, then he retreated back, and there was just a weakness there. I genuinely feel quite bad about constantly bringing up a Greg Taylor and Liam Scales, who I think are giving their absolute everything for Celtic. They're honest, committed players, and they both deserve a lot of credit. Greg Taylor, particularly in terms of the long term, he's done it for a few years now. Liam Scales certainly done it for Celtic for the most part last season. But it's also okay to be ambitious and look at what's ahead and accept that you need better than what's there. And Greg Taylor's as tall as he's ever going to get. That's just the reality of the situation. And you do see teams, domestically and in Europe, targeting Celtic's left-hand side. It's quite clear to see. You don't need to be any sort of genius to see it. It's just very focused down that side. And I think with a more powerful left back and a more powerful and better ball player at left centre-half, we would be in a better position.
I think if you look at it in the domestic side of things, and even in Europe, the targeting of playing the ball in behind against Greg Taylor, he's actually dealt with it really well. I don't think height is our issue. I actually don't. I wouldn't mind technically gifted footballers, even if it was a smaller centre-half. The big issue that Celtic have for me personally is you see it in Europe all the time. There's a reason that Liam Scales and Greg Taylor probably have the highest amount of touches and the highest amount of passes, is that there's a hesitancy. There's a second delay on the decision making. And I don't think that's a height issue, a speed issue. I think that's a technical ability issue. And I think that that's what we need to address. I've said it for quite a while, and I think that you're now starting to see it domestically. People were speaking about the first home game against Kilmarnock. Liam Scales had more passes than Kilmarnock altogether. They let him have the ball. There is an element of, you want those big guys at the back. We look at the Martin O'Neill era and we look at what we had at the back there, but we look at some of the howlers they boys had as well. I think that we want ball playing defenders. We do. We don't even need that sweeper. I think you get that kind of sweeper side of things from Cameron Carter-Vickers. You want a fast left wing back, because that's effectively the position they're playing. It doesn't necessarily need to be tall for me, because if he's fast enough, the ball goes in behind him, he'll get back in time and cover it, or he's got a clever enough centre-half is going to get out to it. I don't think height or power is an issue. I think it's ball playing.
Makes a lot of sense. So, it's one thing being physical and strong, powerful, tall, all these things. If you can't play ball, it's no use. No. And I suppose the challenge for any side, Celtic or otherwise, it's finding the guy that's a nice blend of that. You want to be a certain level of strength and physicality, but ultimately you want to be able to handle the ball. And the way Celtic play, James, generally, domestically at least, we get a lot of the ball, particularly our defenders. And at times in Europe, particularly your home games against these pot 3 and 4 sides, maybe pot 2 or whatever, you'll get a decent amount of the ball there as well. And that's when your distribution is so important. It's fine on Sunday there against Hibs. It's fine against Kilmarnock. It's fine against most of what we'll come up against. But I'm thinking Liam Scales specifically here. We need a talented, competent ball player to help us break those lines in Europe.
Yeah, and it's not like you're without comparison. You just look at your right side of defence. You've got Johnson and Carter-Vickers, who are absolute brick walls for guys to run into, and can both come out with the ball and distribute it. So you're just saying, how can you see that and not say, well, that's our strength in terms of which side of defence? So obviously we need to replicate that. If we can't coach these guys up to more, and I think all credit to them. I think both those players, Taylor and Scales, have worked really, really hard off the pitch, taken all the advice, got themselves to the peak of their abilities. But Celtic are just looking to do a bit more, and that's the harsh reality of it. So we need to flip that defence that we've got on the right and mirror it on the left. Simple as that.
I feel like myself, I've always been really harsh on Greg Taylor, and there's performances that have really frustrated myself over the years when he's played with us. And I think that I always go back to the Bodo Glimt game. He found out, he really did, but I actually think he's got a lot better from that game. I do think he's learned an awful lot, and I think exposure at that higher level, he has benefited from it, and he's done great domestically for us. I just think that he and our manager, I think, are aware that you've hit your mark, and that's, you're not going to get any better. And I think that when we're looking at the European games, we're looking at what we can come up against. Atletico Madrid's a good example. Now, a very good team. We're not expecting to beat them, but it's almost like the basics aren't being followed in certain games, and it's almost like the occasion can sometimes be too much as well. So that's why we need to really improve in these moments. Greg Taylor, for me, should always be a part of a squad. I don't think you say goodbye to him. I think he'll want to start. I think he's got that he's got that mindset. But for this season, he should definitely still be a part of the squad. But I still think we should be looking at a better quality player.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's some really good points made across the board there. You might have heard Brendan Rodger speaking to Michael Stewart yesterday, and he was pinned on where are those weaknesses, where are you looking to strengthen, and it was a bit of a kind of glint in his eye. He said, well, I'll not be telling you, but I'm aware of certain key areas, and I'd be amazed if left back and left centre half aren't amongst them. Anyway, thanks to Robert and Gordon for their questions this week. Remember, if you want us to discuss whatever's on your mind at this time, then it couldn't be easier to leave us a question. Just visit our site at thecelticexchange.com. You'll see a button that says leave voicemail at the bottom right hand corner of any page. Click that, record your question, try not to swear if you can, and we'll do the rest. Okay, let's take another short break. When we come back, we'll bring you the latest from our Name the Goal Scorer feature, and we'll be also asking the question if you know the history when it comes to Celtic.